Hello and welcome to Upstage Downstage.
With me, Richard Platt, seated in the upper circle.
And me, Stephen Rees, seated in a cheap seat. This is the Theatre Podcast, where we discuss productions we've seen, things we've liked and may not have liked, giving our complete unprofessional and non-biased opinions.
So grab a brew, take a seat and let's raise that curtain. On today's episode, we'll be discussing Boeing Boeing. We saw this current touring production at Derby Theatre on the 25th of June 2022. This comedy farce, from 1960 by French playwright Marc Camilletti, was translated by Beverly Cross, premiering in 1962 at the Apollo Theatre in London. So Stephen, what's it all about?
Paris, 1962. Bernard, a successful architect, has a very complicated love life. His three fiancées, Gloria, Gabriella and Gretchen, work for different airlines with different timetables. With the help of Bertha, his long-suffering maid, Bernard has somehow managed to keep all three women blissfully unaware of the other's existence. However, the arrival of an old friend from the provinces and the launch of a new super-fast jet propel Bernard's carefully constructed plans into comic chaos.
So with all that said, let's
set the scene. So Richard, would you like to describe the style of the set, or the set for our listening viewers?
Well, with this being a 60s style production, you were expected to walk into the auditorium to see something very, very 60s inspired.
Yeah.
And when you actually walked in there, I mean, I in a way felt like we were in the Jetsons.
Yes, it has that sort of futuristic, 60s futuristic feel, doesn't it?
It was very much, because obviously Boeing Boeing, you sort of, in Boeing Boeing, you expect where planes, air hostesses are mentioned, it was a futuristic way of travel flying. It was a very new technology in the 60s. It was because it never used to be mainstream until around the 60s.
Well, it was popularised, wasn't it, with Pam Ann?
Yeah, definitely. And the actual set was a very circular set with...
Did I say Pan Am or Pam Ann?
You said Pan Am, but Pan Am's amazing.
Pan America.
Have you seen
Pam Ann? Oh, yeah, she's
amazing.
But anyway,
we digress.
Cut to Boeing Boeing.
So in Boeing Boeing, so the set was very circular. You were presented with 7 doorways, and you knew that they were basically in a high-class flat or apartment, very 60s style. Everything was very curvy. What you were also presented with above the doorways was there were 3 semicircular poles. Well, sort of say.
I suppose what you're trying to say is that what I think they represented was the flights of the airplanes for each of the air hostesses.
Yeah,
and they went around in those kind of
almost like around the world.
Around the world,
yeah.
Basically, that's what they were going for.
Which gave some height to the set. It basically created it felt like the ceiling, but there was not much there. There was not much visible apart from these 3 semicircle.
Well, it's basically the globe, isn't it?
It is the globe,
it's like those lines around the globe.
I thought the set was designed really well because it looked very 60s. It looked very, like I said, it was the very Jetsons and very jet setter, high end, a lot of money. And
it was quite a simple set at that, but it was a nice set.
Yeah. And you almost instantly knew it was going to be a comedy of doors, purely by there'd be a lot of entrances into different doors.
Well, the thing is, unless you know the actual play, you wouldn't quite know what to expect.
No, not at all.
Really. But even from the advertisement, you kind of guessed it was a comedy, and then you would, from then, go on to find out that it was a farce. So when you saw all those doors, you just know a farce is just like a play of doors, isn't it?
I mean, it always worries me when I see a set full of doors, because I hope they're hung well, and I hope they don't start swinging unnecessarily, or they don't shut, or so I've had experience where there's been a lot of the comedy of doors without actually it being in the script. It's more the door's got a mind of its own. So I was, it always makes me wary when I see a set full of doors, because I hope they've been done well.
Especially when it's vital that the door remains shut for a comedy farce. If you've got someone hidden behind that, so they don't see anybody else, and if a door opens just willy-nilly, it's like, the whole thing's been spoiled.
Just completely thrown away. So I did have some confidence because it did look well built. It was quite a small set, really, on the stage. It did sort of almost.
Yeah, it didn't take up too much room, but it was a travelling piece of theatre anyway.
But it worked in the size
Yeah.
a little bit like Ladies of Letters. It was the same sort of set layout. It was smaller than the main stage, which helped because it kept it condensed as a production, I think.
What I found was they went to town on finding the 60s props and the chairs, which was great. However, for me, the actual way they decorated the doors just seemed a bit too bland. Like the colour of it, and it just seemed... I don't know what to say. I wasn't like excited.
No.
By the colour of the backdrop and the actual doors, which is weird.
Yeah.
Because the
whole
play is not about the doors anyway,
but
it just doesn't seem like it was a particularly high-end flat.
No, I know what you mean.
You couldn't really tell where this flat was because it was supposed to be set in Paris in the 60s, but nowhere did that flat...
There were no references there was no
references to Paris.
Or there was not even like a picture of the Eiffel Tower or something that would have... or You're Welcome to Paris, or or
incidentally, no light switches as well.
Yeah, there was
a light.
There was no plug sockets on the wall, and there was no phone socket on the wall where the phone was working. So little bits like that. I mean, I can understand why they went for stylized and didn't have those moments. I mean, the door...
It was, I think, just a little bit too basic. I think had there been a bit more French flair in decoration on the back, because you've already got the chairs and the table and stuff and the costumes as well, which has that 60s feel, but for the actual setting in Paris, unless they were talking about it, it's not representative in the stage, basically.
No, of course not. I mean, one of the things that when we get into the production, because the doors don't necessarily bother me as much as maybe Stephen. However, what was behind the doors... Are you
saying I'm bothered by doors?
Well, yeah, you're a door botherer.
I bother doors?
You bother doors. Your doors, you just...
Do I go around bothering doors morning, noon and night?
You must do. You just do that a vested interest. One thing I had a problem was what was behind the doors rather than in front of the doors. I did feel like there was a little bit where they could have enhanced the production by having a different either colour or different wall behind each door, because when those doors opened, you were left a bit flat because there was half a flat behind that door. Even the grand entrance where the corridor was to the entrance to the flat, it didn't feel like it was another room.
It didn't feel like it was a hallway.
No, and like the kitchen didn't feel like you were going into the kitchen. It just felt like you were going off stage. So there was that would have just enhanced.
Yeah, like when we saw Cluedo, that set was just phenomenal.
Exactly.
Even when they went into the doors for the scullery and the kitchen and so on and so forth, that was perfectly detailed and dressed.
It's like
the
front doors in Cluedo. When you open the front doors, the big glass front doors, there was a backdrop of the outside.
Glass front doors.
The top part, but the top part, there was a bit of glass in it for the effects, the light effects.
A little bit of glass.
But what I mean is, when you open those doors, there was the outdoor scene, which was just the repeat of the outdoor. You could see it went out into the countryside. So you got a glimpse of the countryside. Yeah. Which was enough just to give you... When you're talking about a farce, you have to go there a little bit. It's a little more... It's worth doing those little bits just to make it
which is why this is just a little bit basic, because open a door and it's just a bare scene. I dare say that this is exactly what we got with Red Ellen. Yeah. You open a door and it's just a black set behind it.
Yeah, exactly.
You saw the A-frames with that
which sometimes works, but with this, it just...
They went to the effort of having some flat behind there, but it was the same colour as the paint on the set of the flat in the set.
Even if
what do I mean?
What do you mean? Well, the thing is, though, if you open those doors, you'd expect to see, say, a picture on the wall behind those doors or something
to represent each room.
Yeah, just something that when you open
one was a bathroom.
Yeah,
and that could have just been like
it could have been one tiled wall or something, just to give you that impression. So
but maybe it's just because this production wasn't a big enough production.
No, I mean we are looking at it. We're looking at what we were presented with. So I just think it would have helped enhance the performance just by those little things. Really, Yeah, I'm just gonna have a bit of a sip of this coffee and get my breath back. So, how do you think it was directed? I thought it was directed well, because the movements needed to be sharp.
Yeah,
and there was a lot, because as I said earlier, it is a comedy of doors. Everybody had something to do and had to time themselves well for when one door shut, another one opened, or another one shut and another one opened, and
like life.
Yeah, but if you don't, but to do it on stage, you've really got to be on the ball with your script. You've got to be ready. You can't. There's no waiting around.
Yeah.
You can't be late, because that is part of the comedy by the speed and the pace of the production.
It's passing the baton to the next actor or whatever.
Yeah.
You've got to be
it's
on the
definitely
mark.
a relay race. You've got to do that. Because comedy's hard,
Mm-hmm.
It really is. So overall, I think it was directed well. I do sort of question maybe the casting, but that's not always down to the directing,
No.
So,
but as for the directing, I think there wasn't anything particularly wrong about it. There's a moment which I'm probably going to pick up on an actor in the next segment, but the staging of it. For me, the two high back swivel chairs, I think they're a bit too big. Although they were of the era, I think they're just a bit too big, because a lot of the action happened at the back, like preventing someone from going into the door and so on. All you could see is like heads above those chairs. Now, we were on the front row, but I just think had there just been a sofa there, a 60s styled sofa there where you could see over it, you could have played more into, especially when it came to, was it Robert and Bridget, when they were sort of flirting and
exactly, and chasing each other a little bit around.
And wanting more kisses with the American one. Which one was she? Oh, Gloria, was it? Yes, when Gloria was kissing him or whatever, they could have done it on there, but I just think that might have helped better, having the sofa than all three chairs. Plus it would have given a different layout.
Also, it would have helped with some of the funny intimate scenes, because they wouldn't have had to just rely on the two chairs, like where the opening scene where Bernard has got Gloria's legs on his knee as they're sat there stretched out. That could have been done better on the sofa, where there's more movement rather than being stuck, almost constrained by a swivel chair and having to stretch, and you've got more. It looks more intimate on a sofa.
Plus, if you turn those chairs around, you can't see anybody then.
No. If one of those big swivel chairs was in the place of the other one, then that'd have been better. You only need really one of those on there. Just out of the three, there's just too many swivels.
Yeah, I think that's a correct assumption there, to be fair. But no, the rest of the direction, I thought it was pretty much great. Although, what becomes of the part where I think all three women went to the front of the stage and just acted a lot towards the audience. Yes. And I don't know if that was direction or it was there
was a couple of moments where they spent a lot of time looking out of what was perceived as the window, but it was more at the audience rather than...
But the thing is, it worked for the character of Bridget, because she was very, very passionate. Yes. But the American Gloria... not Bridget. Why do I keep calling her Bridget? I've been doing this all the time. Gretchen. But when Gloria did it, she had a lot of the high buzz American vibe about her. Yeah. But it just seemed a little bit fake, them just standing there doing that. I think outside to the window or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. I think there was moments where...
It felt like sometimes it was a play too much to the audience. Yeah. Instead of just in the moment, in the scene.
I think Gloria maybe didn't have enough level in her performance, and that may be where the director could have reined it in and not let her be as over the top at all points, at all the time. And I think that would have helped. Just you felt like there was breaking the fourth wall a lot, but not intentionally. It was more like they were doing it to be present in the audience when actually it didn't need to be.
Now, what do we think about the actual play itself and the writing? Because this is a translation from the original script that was written and first performed in 1960. How do you think that bodes well today? Because I know I've not let you speak yet, but I kind of thought in the back of my mind it would have been updated, but it's not, because I didn't realise I was actually setting it still in the 60s.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the writing, I'm not going to say dated, because it's set in a 60s time period. But the Act 1 specifically, I do think would have required some editing, because I did feel that it was a long time before you got to the comedy and the funny and the the farce part of the production, because there was a lot of setup and there was a lot of almost giving you obvious moments where you were already filling the gaps in. You already knew where this was going, and it could have just been tightened up, I think, the first act. Because once you got into the second act and the third act, it started getting funnier and funnier and funnier. But the initial act one, I think it just could have done with like reviewing almost.
Maybe times change, you know, when you write a play and then different audiences come back to it. Maybe this is like a whole situation where you go back to an old piece of work and you just edit it. You know, instead of doing it as is, you just edit and adapt as you go on. But I know what you're saying. When I was watching it, I thought this isn't relatively funny at the moment.
No,
this is all I got was the setup.
Yes,
this is why it's going to be funny. This is the situation we're going to be getting in, and this is where the chaos is going to come from, because I've got this lady coming in, flying in here, this lady flying in there, all at different time zones. So
it's almost like the setup was too much because it gave too much away. I felt there was not
maybe if it was said in an offhand way, like he's trying to manage everything.
Yeah.
But it did seem. But again, this is probably of the time where he was just being boastful about the fact that he's got 3 women.
Yeah.
You know, and I think there was like a bit of a disconnect between the audience and that character, because you kind of, if that main character of Bernard actually loved these women, but he didn't know which one to marry, that would have been an understandable reason of why he was having relations with all 3.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think of the time, it was you great man for sort of like sleeping around and just not really wanting to settle down. So I think, had it have been written to a point where he wanted to marry but he didn't know which to choose from, that would have given him more of a farcical element to it, as he's got this like engagement ring, although he has like been engaged to them, but retelling it would be like, oh, which one do we give it to? And they all sort of like come in giving him reasons to, and then anyway it just ends.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I get that.
What about the ending of it?
I mean, for me, the ending...
Did it live up to its rounding off the characters' journeys, shall we say?
Well, the journeys. And I think it did. It did round it all up. I think
after heightening everyone's emotions and all the chaos, when the girls do eventually meet each other, do you think was the payoff justified?
I think the payoff was okay, but yet again, it could have been bigger. I think maybe it could have had more twists.
How would you have put the twists in, or what twists?
I think that there was a couple of moments where I think it could have been, but I suppose this was written in a time when this worked at that point, and it's really difficult to analyse what, you know, if you're going to do a classic theatre and you're going to pick a product, you almost stop yourself being able to change it. However,
although it does happen, because I know there was an Egg-born one that I went to see, Bedroom Farce, and the original didn't have any mobile phones, but then he went back to it and added a reason why they've got mobile phones and why they still couldn't communicate properly.
Yeah, I mean, there was a moment where Robert basically almost took over the role of Bernard, where he got the opportunity to have multiple partners, and he was going out with Gretchen, and it could have been funnier if he still took the list and still left you with the intrigue of whether he did actually carry on the legacy of having more women in with different timetables, rather than him just saying, oh no, it don't matter, I'm not going to do that anymore. It could have been funnier, because it could have just left you going, well, we never know if he's going to do the same now, because he was the meek and mild person that would never do it, and then he's actually turned and changed, and he's seen the benefits, or it's changed him as a person. And
so you're saying like more of a role reversal where Robert actually becomes Bernard, and Bernard becomes
Robert in a way, and it would have had been almost. It would have had more confidence in the end of production if it had just walked off and you've left with, he's now changed dramatically, and I think that could have been funny. And even if Gloria would have run off with the maid, there's because
out of nowhere there's a romance.
Out of nowhere that you didn't even see happening, it could have been even funnier. And because there was a time when Gloria went into the kitchen, but nobody discussed it in the second half. There was a moment where Gloria hid in the kitchen with the maid, and it could have just
the maid would have done it for 50%.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I think that may have that may have just gave it a little bit more cheek or a little bit more fun, and I think that would have made it a little bit just, rather than it ending how it did, I think that could have just gone a little bit, sent it up a little bit more. Because let's say at the end of the day, this is a farce, so anything's possible. And I think that's the difference.
As long as all the storylines are wrapped up, I kind of like the fact that Robert did. He was on the precipice of, I could actually be like Bernard, but he chose to remain true to himself, and it was Bernard who changed to be more like Robert, and actually one woman's good for me. So I like that, because at the end of the day, I think that's probably the lesson learned in a way. Definitely. And the upper hand came from Gloria, who was also like Bernard and playing him. So she had the option of 3 guys, and he was just one of 3, and he didn't know it. Yeah. And whilst he was letting her down, she was like, oh, thank God I can go and actually marry this millionaire now. Yeah, definitely. Well, it was a different sort of way around to how that came about, but that's basically how it ended. So she wasn't the one being used by a man and being the one where she doesn't benefit from this. All 3 women get what they want without it looking as if they're some kind of object to a man's desire. Even the maid, she gets a 40% increase in her wages. Yeah, she does well by staying. Gloria, she goes off to marry the millionaire because she had choices. There was Gabriella, who actually stayed with Bernard and was engaged, and they were setting the date. And Gretchen, who actually went with Robert because she actually had more of a connection and actually was in love. So they all got what they wanted after that whole farce and finding out which door they actually belonged in, I suppose. Yeah, definitely, yeah. So I think it was a good farce. Yeah, totally. I do. I agree. You can't beat Noises Off, though. Sorry. No. But I enjoyed this for what it was. And yeah, after Act 1 was, I suppose, clumsily setting the situation up. Yeah, I think if that was tightened up, that would have made it even more of a. That would have made it even more enjoyable. But then, that's how it was written. So I think if they were trying to be true to it, then and I can see that enough. Other people may have needed the setup. Other audience members may have needed that. Yeah. Whereas I suppose I probably watch it and I quickly start knowing where this is going because of I've seen a lot of productions, and I knew you almost know what's coming. Whereas to the new theatre goer or somebody that's never seen something like that before, as a writer myself, I'm already like picking up the notices as to what the setup is and the wants and the needs and the obstacles and stuff like that. So it's quite clear to me what was going on, but I think it was just too on the nose. Yeah, I think but again, it's a comedy, so you've got to get it out there so people are with you from the get-go. You need your audience on your side to know that it's a farce and this is what's going to happen. And other people I know that have seen it that have not maybe analysed theatre as much as I do, they have enjoyed it, so they've not even mentioned that the opening was long. So for me, that says a lot, to the average sort of theatre goer. Of course, yes, because your family members went to see this as well after. They went to see it in the evening. I mean, they thoroughly enjoyed it, and they said it was nice to have see a great farce again, really. And and they are theatre goers, aren't they? Theatre goers, they go and see a lot. So that's sort of a highest recommendation in a way, just them going to see it. And I did not tell them anything about the production, so in a way that sort of says a lot, Which is good, because we didn't even know much about it when we went to go and see it. Not at all. I mean, to be honest, I was intrigued to see what the London Classic Theatre do, because I've not seen a production they've done before. So it was nice to see sort of what they are putting out and producing. And I was interested in this simply because I just thought it would be quite nostalgic and nice to go back, revisit 1960s, and it gave me sort of the styles of the sitcom in the 70s, 69 to 70, with Peter Jones, who used to be in this production as well, of A Bird's Eye View, because he was in that as well as this when it was first on. So I could revisit a bit of history, I suppose, and it was I quite enjoyed it. Moving on now, I think we're
here for the drama.
So Richard, let's talk about the acting.
Yes, let's do that.
Because we don't know any of these actors.
No, at all. And in a way, I'm glad.
Good.
Because I really like watching productions where you don't know who they are. And you don't know, because for me, a performer and an actor is about that character, not about where they've been and what they've done.
We've been to see like Cluedo, and there was a couple of famous stars on there, because these theatre companies, if they can afford them, they'll have them to, and they'll be the first billing, and they'll use them to advertise this show, a show that they're in. Now this one, they had none of that.
No.
All of these, I think pretty much you could say, not long out of Rider Drama School.
Yeah.
Many of them.
Yeah.
They've all done. They've built up. They're new actors building up their career.
Yeah,
basically
they've been performing in theatre in roles, but not necessarily getting that break in the big production that you know their name. But in some ways, these are the actors that you sort of want to see because they're just doing it.
Yeah, these always do well
Yes.
in productions where they are against the familiar names, and sometimes the familiar names don't actually put out the bag.
It's like I went to see Guys and Dolls quite a few years ago now, and Patrick Swayze was meant to be in it, but because it's the matinee and none of the principal cast perform, it's normally the understudies to give them a chance to perform the show and do it. And I want to say it was the best performance I've ever seen of a musical production, a production where you didn't actually know anybody in that production, and you felt like you were in the musical because they didn't take on it. There was no expectation of them being the famous person that they were, and I think that's where, like this, you didn't have any preconceived ideas of how they performed. You just took them for the characters they were.
Yeah, I thought the cast was extremely well, worked really well together, to be honest.
Yeah.
I suppose if I had a gripe, which I normally do.
Well, you're gonna. I've
always got a gripe.
Yeah, you've got to have a gripe. You've got to have a comment, or
if I've not got an issue with those doors, which apparently I'm a door.
I mean,
lover.
I don't think this is a bleeping episode, so you know.
We won't go that far.
We need to do that far.
I'm not that stressed out and panicked.
No, it's
and
quite calm,
shaken to the core. No, I'm quite chilled. But I would say Bertha, the maid, acted really well.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna
really sharp.
Yes.
Really quick.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say that, but I'm not sure on the wig.
No, I think costuming, there was a few moments that I did question.
All the costumes were great, though.
They were.
So shout out to the costume supervisor, Kate Lyons.
Yeah, definitely.
They were brilliantly done.
Yeah,
sculpted.
definitely.
From the nightgowns to the actual air hostesses, each different colour.
I mean, even to Gretchen being Lufthansa and having matching yellow pants in a bag. That made me chuckle because
they were
everything
like
about her
Rangers,
was yellow.
Weren't they?
Yeah.
And the bags.
Yes.
And the attention to detail of that period piece was just
exactly.
spot on.
It was it was the
good.
bag of the time at the right period and everything.
And I think even, dare I say it, the right suits for the guys as well. They weren't ones which were like modernised.
No, they were very well fitted as well, and they were the right,
they were,
cause tweed and.
I think in those times, the waists for men didn't lie on their hips; they were just higher up, and I think they've got that pattern specifically done.
Yeah,
which
definitely.
You always notice, don't you, when they sort of skimp on the men and the costume for the men.
Although I did feel that the maid's costume, Bertha's costume, was almost off the rack maid costume out of a party planner. I just didn't feel it was.
I think also because it was brown.
Yes.
I don't know if that. The thing is,
it didn't
I don't
feel
know.
very French made. That's the thing that I was a little bit confused about. It felt like it could have been better to make that. It could have been more LOLO than sort of party planner.
We've gone from talking about the cast to the costume now, which is fine.
Yeah. We'll come back to the cast.
We're quite universal. Universal? No, I don't mean that.
We're utilising the time very.
No, we're not allowed to use that word. But her costume could have been a little bit tidier,
I think with all the effort
better.
that had gone to all the others to be so specific, I do think it was a little flat.
Maybe that was the whole point, that she was like not to be too colourful.
Yeah,
with it being brown.
But we made comment of the wig she was wearing, and I think that
just
also,
her normal hair, or just maybe. I mean, I think the actor in her pictures,
I think just
dyed it. But if she'd have just had like a greyish hair or done something with her natural hair and just tied it up in a ponytail,
but she could have had a lace headpiece to go
like
over that.
Yeah,
but that would have still give the same impression without the. Almost, it was a Party City wig.
It wasn't a nice wig.
It wasn't a human hair wig. It was very much a plastic. It felt very plasticky.
It was a cheap
very
wig.
Cheap, pound shop wig.
Yeah, she was walking around like Debbie Davis. It just didn't look Right.
No, when they'd gone to all the effort of everybody else having the right haircuts, the right this, the right... that was just the little moment that would have made it better, I think.
I mean, her performance...
Oh.
We're going to go back to the performance now, but
going.
her performance was really good.
Yes.
Extremely good.
She was the comedy glue between the whole production, really, because she held all the scenes together, all those bits of chaos. She was the one person popping up and saying things in the middle of everything else, just so sharp and so quick.
Yeah, and I think at the time she reminded me of the woman with the sardines in Noises Off.
Yes, definitely.
You know, that character.
So very, very much the same.
You know, who's always like there throughout.
Yeah.
You know, sorting out. I think there's always them kind of roles, aren't there?
There is, but in those type of roles, you've got to know your script. You've got to know everybody else's script because you're the one that always.
Well, you know everything.
You know everything, but you're also the one that can also get everybody else out of a situation if you need to. If there's because you're different to the rest of the cast, you can almost get away with saying something different and add something into it, or get people back on track, or it's useful to have that character.
Now, I thought the three girls, Gloria, Gretchen, and Gabriella, they were extremely good.
Yeah, they were.
The one thing I would say, which is I suppose is a little bit of a negative thing, but the one playing the American, Gloria, she just seemed to just be a little bit too one note, high pitched, high
totally
energy.
Agree.
And I think that's, I mean, we spoke about it in the direction bit, but her levels could have just been a little bit calmer at times.
Yeah,
there
wasn't as much colour in her performance. It was an expectation that she would walk to front stage, talk to the audience, and then go back and do some more lines. And don't get me wrong, she didn't miss lines, or she was still good. It's just there was times that she didn't show any fluctuations between being loud and brash, then being persuasive, then being controlling. Then it just seemed to all be hit it hard at all times.
Yeah, it just felt like a Millicent Martin on speed, just coming straight in like this American, just gobbing off. And I don't mean that to sound in any way like nasty towards the actress. I just think had someone said just on this particular moment, just change your tone or your pace, because we've already had this 100% coming in like a whirlwind.
It's almost for me.
But she just needed
it's almost for me. They could have played with the moments of being that air hostess who's quite forceful and customer service driven, to then slipping into her own personality and then slipping back. It's like, because you're so used to being on the airline and being that person, she could have been lost in that more.
Yeah.
But then also switched to her own personality. There could have been a little bit more of that, and I think it was just because you couldn't really work out what she'd be like on a plane to what she'd be like with her in the home setting. Whereas I felt that Gabriella and Gretchen had more of that. You could almost see that what they'd be like. You could see how Gretchen would be on Lufthansa Airways. You could see that she'd be that forceful person that would make sure everybody's done what they're doing. But then she was having loving moments with Robert and changing her personality to suit that. I think that's
down to the levels.
And that's where she showed those levels by doing that. Whereas I just think that Gloria could have but this is just small. But it's just noticeable that it's things. The other two showed more of diversity. I think that was in that.
And it was quite fun seeing Nathalie Barclay, who played Gabriella, actually break character and just laughed at the moment where Robert was basically speaking or pretending that he's the one that spoke up, when it was actually I think it was Gloria shouting from the bathroom.
Yeah.
So he had to pretend it was him. That voice came from him in a high-pitched tone. And
it just broke her.
Yeah, because the whole audience just burst out laughing, because it was a really high point of the show on this one. We're in a full steam of chaos here. And then she just smiled, but that smile was more than just a character
really
smile.
Was.
She broke. She broke.
Yeah, she really broke.
But that was made her more endearing there.
But then there was also moments that she put in where she played a spoiled brat at certain points, and she was stomping her feet, and she almost went back to when she came back storming back after being left in a restaurant. And those moments, it was like she went from laughing and joking to then all stamping her feet when she come back in, and that could give her more performance levels, and you'd warm to the character because of that.
And she didn't do it in an annoying way.
No, not at all. You just knew that you could see her going through different emotions almost.
Yeah.
Whereas I suppose with
Isabella.
Yeah,
Isabella
with
played
Isabel
Gloria.
played
Yeah.
Gloria, you struggled to see the different emotions because it was all very one performance.
Yeah,
and I
because
think
it
that was
was
the difference.
one note. I mean, she had the ability to take centre stage, shall we say? She had that stage
They all
presence.
commanded the stage. You know, I mean, we don't know if this was direction because we were talking about it from Gloria's performance.
Yeah.
But it could have been. She could have been told to be that like that. So you know. But I mean, one thing I would say is for all the actors, their volumes were
definitely with their diction and everything. It was
volumes,
spot on.
diction, and performance,
and the characterization as well.
They were there. They were on it, and I think
especially I'd say the standouts for me would be Gretchen, Jessica Dennis. I thought she was just adorable. She came in this passionate, just love for Bernard, and also Robert Paul Sandys. He was just amazing through and through, amazing, just in character all the time.
He was,
and considering Bernard's supposed to be like you'd think the lead, actually it's Robert's the lead because he's the one that has to make up all the farce and deal with.
He's the one running
Bernard's,
about, keeping everything going.
Basically,
yeah, and I do think he was so key to the production, but there was times where his pauses were spot on, or he's waiting to deliver his line, or everything was just done with so much confidence, and you know he really did show that he was a very, very good performer. So I mean, huge shout out to Paul Sandys, from for me. I mean, well, the other thing I'd say about their performances is in a farce, in a comedy, you can't throw away any lines, and when you perform them, you have to perform them knowing that it might get a laugh. So your pauses have got to be spot on to allow people to laugh, allow people to get the joke. And I don't think that they threw away any line.
No.
In their performance. As a whole cast, when they were on stage, they waited, then they delivered the lines, then they waited again, then they delivered the lines again. They let the audience get the jokes, they let the audience react.
Yeah.
And that's big because I've seen so many productions where they've almost rode over the audience and it's thrown lines away and wasted the performance. And it's like
you're not talking about Red Ellen.
I might be.
Oh.
But I've seen other productions as well in my time. There's a lot of comedies that I've seen, or I've seen anything from amateur to professional comedies where they just waste so much of the script. It's been written to create a laugh, and they just may as well just chuck it in the bin because whereas this
it's like nervous energy. They've got to speak.
They don't want to forget the line, but then they don't realise that it's only the same as doing a farce, comedy, panto. They're all made to make that laugh, so you've got to allow the audience time.
Yeah, exactly. You allow them to react and laugh at a joke, but then an actor can just wait to say his line or her line or whatever, and just give a look to the audience, and then they might even burst out laughing again.
The physical side of it is just as important.
Exactly.
Because it and also...
And Joe Castleton in here, I remember watching a bit where there was a huge raucous of laughter from the audience, and she was about to say her next line, but then she just stood at the back and waited with a tea tray and just waited for it to die down before she
in
went
her
back
head,
into it.
she would know that her next line's going to hit even more of a laugh.
Exactly.
And it's knowing that, well, I've got them now, but I'm going to get them again, and I'll get them again. And it's like, and that's how an actor has to perform a farce. Yeah. They've got to realise that what they say has got so much weight behind it. So you can't, you don't jump script because it's important.
Yeah. I don't want to actually say that John Dorney, I wasn't quite sure if he was miscast. I couldn't see the attraction there.
No.
For Robert, yeah.
Definitely.
But for Bernard, I thought, I can't imagine him having 3 really attractive air stewardesses. This is going to actually sound really nasty, me actually saying that. However...
You're going to say it?
I've said it. It doesn't float my boat. But it's... I suppose it's a bit like hello.
Yeah.
How do all the waitresses find Renee so attractive?
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe it's that kind of thing that we're going for.
Okay, just,
so I'll wipe that comment off, and hopefully I don't sound too vicious, shall we say. But there was a bit in his acting where, when it came to unravelling all the mess in like the third act, he was like, I don't know if he was on drugs, if he was drinking, if he chose to act like he was supposed to be drunk, although it didn't call for him to be drinking.
There was not really any setup
he
though
was
for
just
if
all
he was
over
being
the place.
drunk, because you never really saw him drink throughout the production. So
No,
the others
exactly.
drunk, the others had a drink, and there was other like the maid having scotch, and there was times where Robert had a drink, and but you never actually saw Bernard drink, and then all of a sudden he became almost uncontrollable and like he'd lost
like
his
restless,
mind.
but
Yeah.
it didn't come across as if he was restless.
That
It was just
didn't
his
pay
legs
off because that didn't pay off because there was no setup in a way.
No, he was like his like legs just ended up just being like moving on their own accord. It was just it was an off-putting performance.
But then was it a direction thing? Because we just don't know.
Either way, I have to say it's probably my least favourite.
Yeah, I think if I had to sort of
just because
analyse
it grated on me, I just didn't. I didn't understand
for me,
it.
he was the only actor that I felt a little bit disconnected with, because I don't feel that he almost gelled with the rest of the cast the same.
Yeah.
Because even at the opening, you almost just felt like he was a little bit disconnected from the time period and I don't know, it just felt a little bit.
So what you're saying is maybe
awkward.
Down to the character that's in the script.
Well, yeah, but also him. But
portrayal.
also him. I think there's an actor. I felt disconnected from him as an actor. Whereas if maybe Robert had have been in his place, I'd have probably been with him more, because I believed Robert's performance, as in Paul Sandy's performance, more.
And I think that's the role Peter Jones
It
had.
almost felt socially awkward, Bernard did, like in general, and I think that's where it just felt a little bit.
But whether he was
disconnected.
acting to play up that social awkward,
of course.
I mean, I'm very socially awkward, and I don't act drunk or on drugs.
And I think
I don't
there was
stand like that. So this
that
is why I
bit
can't
didn't
understand
feel,
it.
Yeah, the bit where his legs were going from under him, it didn't really.
I don't get how he managed to get to that character. I also need to give a bit of a shout out here, because I've just read that the set and costume designer was Beck Palmer. So whilst I credited the costume supervisor, it's probably the set and costume designer, Beck Palmer, for doing the 1960s costume as well.
Yeah, which was really good.
Yeah, overall it was really good.
Yeah, and in a way, you can see that the aesthetics of the production, as in the set, was done for a reason, so that those three air hostesses had very distinct colours that were contrasted against the set and the scenery, so they stood out even more. So there was a lot of work that must have been gone into.
That's another point, isn't it? With the set, the maid didn't have, although we've just hyped her up, there was no French accents.
No, which was we're in Paris, and
they all did really well on
the
their
maid
accents.
at least to have a French accent, just because she would have been the lower paid and more local than the rest, because they were all international.
Yeah.
And this was a local maid. It just felt a little bit like a maid with a British accent. There was no acknowledgement that she'd come over with Bernard. It was more, she's just there as the maid. So it just felt like there could have been more of it being hammed up a little bit more.
But again, this could have been like skewed with the lower low.
Yes.
With the Morbihan accent.
Yeah, of course.
Accents.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Yeah, because Gretchen, Gloria, and Gabriella all had different accents,
and they were really good.
Yeah. So and they were speaking English in a different dialect, in a different twang. So they, there was an Italian and definitely a German and an American, dialect in the background of it.
Yeah. Now moving on to our next segment.
What the heck is this?
So let's talk about the technical aspect of this whole production. Richard, over to you.
Well, it was very much a lights up, lights down production. There was no real changes in the lighting, so it was really a general cover with lighting, where they almost just covered the whole stage with a general wash of light, so that it caught all the cast members. I mean, it looked good. My only thing I'd question is there was a lamp, there was a hanging light that was. It did work, but it wasn't in the right position. It felt like it was at the back of stage, whereas normally most installations of lighting is put by nearer the window, which was at the front of stage.
Yeah.
So it just felt a little bit in the wrong place. I mean, sound effect wise, I don't think there was any apart from the phone ringing.
Yeah, there was nothing.
There was
nothing
It was
spectacular
because the doors were creating their own sound effects. So it was literally
probably their own little problems
yeah,
as well with the.
It was.
On the
I mean, the
carpet.
phone rang probably about 4 times, and that was it in the whole production. So I mean, it would be an easy job for a sound engineer because there's not a lot to do.
Yeah.
They play. I mean, one thing I did find strange is they played some 60s French music in the background as you walked into the production and in the interval. However, that did stop in between the safety curtain coming down and then only came up for the song before it opened again and started.
Probably run out of tape.
Yeah, I mean, so for me it could have continued. I mean, they could have had a playlist on in the interval just to keep you within the scene.
I don't know.
But overall, I mean, there wasn't much technically that was used. I mean, we did mention in the set there was no plug sockets or phone socket on the wall or anything. So, I mean, technically there wasn't a lot really.
But what they could have done is because the window was facing the audience, you could have had a natural light up.
Yes,
some kind of light flowing into the room
at certain points of the day because
shadows, maybe.
because at certain points of the day because they
yes, because Act 1 was morning, Act 2 was afternoon, then after the interval Act 3 was evening,
and it changed. So
and evening was the only time that actual lamp, the light fitting from above. Actually
I mean, one
on.
thing that could have been also done to enhance things is when they opened the doors into the bathroom or into the bedrooms, there could have been light coming through those doors that would have made it even more of a
sound effects of the bath being filled up. For example.
And even when you open the front doors, there was one door shut sound effect, but it was never used again. They reacted to the door being shut outside. Oh, somebody's come in, the door's shut.
There was because it was mentioned in the script, there was a doorbell ring, which was when Robert was being kissed.
Yeah.
And then he thought he was hearing things because he was being
kissed.
But
at first, the buzzer didn't sound... I thought the buzzer was... I didn't know...
I heard the
I heard the buzzer, but I couldn't really work out if that was a flat entry door. I mean, the other thing is there was no phone on the door. There was no buzzer to let people in downstairs if it was a flat, because normally there'd be a buzzer on the wall with an intercom.
Yeah, perhaps
so if you reference it, there was nothing there to reference. So how can you have that noise?
Just, them gone into too much detail with the whole set thing.
Yeah, but that's
But
overall, I mean, lighting wise, it looked good. The preset was very much in coloured light, but the overall production was just done in a
pretty much bare minimum.
You
could have done more, but
how much more do you do? I mean, to be honest, for me, the farce is it's more about the actual comedy and the performance than it is about the lighting and sound. Sometimes with these, I mean,
this is coming from someone who says they're the actual extra person on stage.
It is if it warrants it. I mean, the thing is, I do think that there's probably not really anywhere in the script.
Done the sound effect run in the bath. They could have done a little bit.
They could have, but it would have they would have had to rehearse it with that thing in, and it depends if it was in the script. They're probably trying to stay true to the actual performance, maybe.
Yeah, I suppose.
Call this a show.
So, Richard, summing up now, what did you make of Boeing?
I really enjoyed it. It was a nice night of comedy entertainment. I do think the first act, just personally, it did take a lot of time to actually get into the fun aspect of the production. But overall, I thought it was a good farce. It was just a good laugh, and sometimes we need a little bit of a laugh in the times we're in. So I do think that it was, overall the cast did a really good job. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you here because even though the set was okay, it was nice, it was interesting, I think there could have been scope for a little bit more.
Yeah.
However, it still didn't take away the farcical enjoyment elements of this actual play. No. So I still enjoyed it. I thought it was great. If it was ever to go on again, I think I actually would come and see this.
Yeah, I'd go and see it again.
There's certainly different bits to it, like at the beginning of Act 1 where it was just set up and stuff, exposition. But again, nothing you can do about that, I suppose.
No, not at all. But it also makes me want to watch other things London Classic Theatre are doing.
Absolutely,
that's the other thing.
They've got Abigail's party coming up, so I think we might have to...
look out for that one.
Yeah, that's next year, isn't it?
Yeah, next year. So,
and also they've done a couple of Pinter plays.
Yes.
The Caretaker and Birthday Party. I think I've just seen Birthday Party. So that if they're going to do classic theatre,
yeah, I'll definitely be looking out to what they do.
Go and see.
Definitely.
Right, scores on the doors, Richard, from 1 to 10, with 10 being travelling first class and 1 being lost in the luggage compartment. What are you going for here?
Well, I'd like to give this a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
I enjoyed it.
7 out of 10. Oh, I really don't like the fact that I'm agreeing with you, but I'm agreeing with you. This is a 7 for me. In the middle here.
That's where I am.
It could get better.
Yeah.
But it could have been a lot worse.
It could have been a hell of a lot worse.
Exactly. So I really enjoyed this. And yes, as I say, I will definitely come and see this one again.
Yeah, 7 out of 10
and actually,
for me.
I have to confess, I actually probably would go and see Cluedo again.
Yeah.
I know. That's bad. But anyway, there we go. So, what sound effect will you be choosing from the following? A complete train wreck? Tumbleweed? An audible shrug of the shoulders? A slow clap? A pleasant applause? Or a standing ovation? What will it be?
I'm going to give this a pleasant applause. I enjoyed it, and it was pleasant applause from me.
And it's a pleasant applause from me. There we are. Aren't we so agreeable?
Yeah,
Easily pleased with this one. Well done to the cast of Boeing Boeing and all the backstage crew. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll be looking out for the next production.
London Classic Theatre. Go and see Boeing Boeing. So there we are. That's our discussion of Boeing Boeing. We hope you found it insightful.
If not, entertaining.
Coming up over the next few episodes, we will be discussing the new production of Blood Brothers,
Fascinating Aida on the road again,
and A Week in the West End, where Richard Platt takes on 5 of the top shows. That's it for this week, folks.
If you'd like to drop us a message, please email us at upstagedowstagepod@gmail.com. Remember, you can always join in the chat to share with us your views on a production.
Also, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you get every episode the second it's released. And we hope you join us again for another instalment of Upstage Downstage.